Welcome back to Zombie Recaps. Today, we will talk about a horror movie from 2018 titled, He's Out There. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. The movie flips off with multiple scenarios from a devastated setback with a story of a mouse and the crow being narrated in the background. It turns out to be a young girl named Kayla, who's reading the story in her car. Suddenly, her younger sister Maddie jumps on her with a zombie doll, but gets scolded by her mother, Laura, who's putting this stuff in the trunk as they're leaving on a journey. In the meantime, her husband arrives there and apologizes to her for not accompanying them. Nevertheless, he promises to be on time and thus, they bid goodbye to each other and the family embarks on their journey. The voyage takes them across a dense forest until they reach a gate. Laura gets out to unchain the lock, but it doesn't budge. Just then a man named Owen arrives there and introduces himself. He shows a trick to open the door and after unlocking it, he explains that he's the local security here. Furthermore, he states that another family lived in Laura's house before until their boy Johnny went missing. Laura hears the story and the family decided to move ahead. She gets back in the car and the girls mention that their father is coming as well, upon which and lets them go. But as they pass the wooden fence, the camera shows us the name John carved in the pillars. The next scene pops up where the family arrives at the lake house, and the girls run outside to the wooden deck on the river shore. Meanwhile, Laura gets a call from her husband, Sean, who inquires about their safety while buying some gifts for them. As they talk to each other, he picks up a special music box and takes it to the counter. The family call ends there as Sean reassures that he'll be there very soon. Laura puts the phone back in the car and takes the stuff inside the house while her girls run around the area and run towards the swings. Inside, Laura lays down to rest and notices the girls through the window. During that, Maddie drops from the swing and she notices a red string line leading into the forest. Both the sisters start following the thread which leads them deep into the forest. On the other hand, Laura changes into fresh clothes and notices that her daughters are missing. She goes downstairs and finds the house deserted. Suddenly a loud that catches our attention, but it turns out to be Kayla and Maddie out on the porch who happily come inside. Kayla can be seen hiding something in her clothes, which she safely puts in the drawer upstairs. Her mother asks about it, but she claims that it's something for Daddy. So Laura leaves her be and goes downstairs to make some pizza. Later they read the story of Darkness Hides, but Maddie becomes seemingly dazed. She goes upstairs while Kayla observes her closely upstairs. Laura tucks them in and Maddie's situation begins to decline, but she doesn't utter a word despite Kayla's inquiry. Downstairs, Laura tries to relax by pouring herself a drink and having a smoke outside in the peaceful environment. There she calls Sean and gets to know that he's on his way. Beaming with happiness, she begins to return inside, but certain twig breaking sounds catch her attention. The snapping sound continues but her eyes catch nothing, so she heads inside, but just then, the camera shows the silhouette of a man among the darkness who observes the house from a distance. Afterwards, Laura gets woken up by Kayla, who mentions that Maddie is not okay. Therefore, they dash to her room where she starts to vomit. Laura takes her daughter to the bathroom where her condition worsens and she starts to gag. After a strenuous effort, Laura pulls out a ribbon from her throat which states Pilo. Laura looks at that in amazement and asks Kayla if they ate something. Upon that, the story is revealed that the girls actually followed the red thread into the forest and found a tea party prepared for them. They pick up the cupcakes and the scene shifts back to the present where Lori inquires about Maddie, and it is known that she ate the cake while Kayla saved it for her daddy. Upon that, Laura checks the cupcake and finds another ribbon inside which says goodbye. The note scares her and she tries to call someone hurriedly, but the line goes blank. Suddenly, they start hearing noises from their rooms around and the girls get scared to death. But as a mother, Laura calms them down and decides to go out to grab her phone. Unfortunately, once she runs outside, it turns out that her phone has been stolen from the SUV. And instead of that, Maddie's zombie doll has gift wrapped for her. Understanding the danger, Laura runs back inside to grab the girls and leave at once. Kayla and Maddie start crying in sheer terror, but Laura forces them to escape as soon as possible. Therefore, they run to the car and try to drive away, but the wheels suddenly break away and the car slides aggressively against the ground. The accident causes all of them to freak out, but Laura manages to climb down and take the girls back inside safely. After the horrific incident, the family closes all the curtains and windows to get secured. Laura checks on Maddie, whose condition isn't well, She decides to grab some medicine for her and leaves her in Kayla's care. In the bathroom, Laura spills some of the pills down the sink but tries very hard to compose herself. After taking some deep breaths, she returns and provides Maddie with the medicine. Suddenly they hear banging on their door and everyone gets scared once again. Slowly, gradually, Laura advances towards the window where tearing of fabric can be heard. In a swoosh she slides the curtain and beneath that we witness their family picture completely vandalized. All the faces are viciously ripped off except Laura's. This incident incorporates more fear in the girls and Laura takes them upstairs to prepare them to leave. But at the same time, Maddie vomits once again. Laura cleans her face and asks Kayla to be brave and reassures that Daddy will be here soon. Upon that, Maddie remarks that he's already here. Laura instantly gets up to look outside and witnesses a masked man who waves at her and she watches him leave afterwards. In the meantime, Sean arrives at the lake house gate and finds it locked. Moreover, he finds a note on the side stating "Follow me" and the red thread. Ignoring it, he tries to call his wife but she doesn't answer. Instead, he notices the phone ringing in the distance. With no choice left, he follows the red thread into the forest and tries to call Laura time and again. Eventually, he reaches a place where he locates the phone on a table still ringing by his call. But as he lifts up the phone in front of him appear four puppets of his family. As he watches in confusion, the masked killer gradually creeps up on him from behind while holding an axe and the scene fades out. On the other side, Laura motivates Maddie to be brave like her grandma. Furthermore, she imposes that their father is on the way. But just then they hear rumblings again, so Laura takes the girls downstairs. In the living room, they hear the door banging again. But this time, Sean's recording is being played outside. Cautiously, she goes outside and opens the door to find a recorder hanging from a rope with Sean's voice being played on it. Suddenly, a rock drops from the roof and later, Sean's buddy hits the porch. Laura screams in disbelief and slowly turns his dead body around to witness the most horrifying moment of her life, where she sees her husband dead with his eye sockets butchered empty. She cries endlessly by looking at his corpse, but immediately controls it as her girls come around the window. She runs back inside to keep them away from the tragic sight. As she hugs them close, the lights suddenly go off and terror crawls in their bones once again. After putting everyone in composure, she urges them to go outside with her. But as soon as they stroll out in the open, they come face to face with the wooden puppets of themselves, with Laura's puppet being hanging on a noose while the other girls sit on the swing. They recoil in fright, but suddenly they get bombarded by eggs. They run back inside and close all the doors. The girls held their mother to place the furniture in front of the door, but the puppet doll smashes through the window and falls on the floor. All of them scream in terror and run upstairs, where Laura consoles them once again. But as for herself, she lays on the ground and starts whimpering in grief and sorrow. Her daughters hug her and they huddle together. But later, an idea flashes in her mind to grab the keys for Sean's car. Therefore, she motivates the girls, makes them hide away in the cabinet and gives them a timer for 20 seconds before she returns. With that, she runs downstairs and retrieves the keys from Sean's dead body. And just as the timer strikes 20, she returns to her girls. In the meantime, Owen arrives at the lake house gate and enters the lawns of the house. Laura notices his arrival and she runs to the window crying for help in the beam of flashlight. Owen notices her pleading to him, but he doesn't hear her, so he nears the house. But the killer crawls up behind him out of the darkness. Laura breaks the window and tries to warn Owen about the monster, but the killer succeeds in his task and brutally murders the man, extinguishing the last hope for the ladies. The hectic situation makes them run downstairs again, where Laura comes upon the storybook. But this time, it is re-narrated by the killer in his own way and sketches are made on it. Laura gets scared and reaches the door, where the killer breaks it and pulls her out, ultimately disappearing into the night. The girls scream in terror and start to shiver in fright. But Kayla composes herself and they decide to be on their own. Maddie picks up the knife and they slowly go outside. In the open, they hear a song being played on the radio, so they follow it, eventually reaching their father's car. They find the presence inside in their mother as well, who's trapped in the trunk. Suddenly, the murderer emerges from behind and stabs Laura at her side with his axe. Kayla and Maddie scream in terror and run away, and the killer chases them in the car. He drives it towards the house, but the girls run inside and hide away under the bed, while whimpering in fright. They silently lie underneath the bed and watch the killer enter the room. He checks all the cabinets for them but doesn't find anything, so he slowly sits on the bed and starts talking to them. He introduces himself as John and states that he lived here for years. With that, he places a jar of a liquid beside on the floor. Furthermore, he states that the storybook that the girls read was given to him when he was a boy, and since then, he's been looking for answers. Finishing up his talk, he dips a cloth in the jar and claims that he's the real darkness around them. With that, he lifts up the bed to expose the girls. They scream in terror, but John overcomes them and knocks them unconscious by the chloroform cloth, which puts an end to the scene. The next scenario begins in the fresh morning, where we witness that John has laid the girls in the open grass while their wooden puppets are placed around the table. His scraggly sketches littered the place while Laura struggles to breathe in the car's trunk. John arrives there and takes out the axe from her side. Afterwards, he proceeds to the puppet area and starts carving out the eyes from a puppet while glancing towards the girls threateningly. During all this, Kayla wakes up but pretends to be unconscious all the time. She tries to wake up Maddie, but she doesn't budge. Meanwhile, John rips off the arm of Maddie's puppet, and after a while he advances towards them to implement it. Just as he raises the axe, a music box starts playing in the distance. The sound catches his attention and he leaves the area to look for it. He travels through the forest and arrives at the car to find the music box spinning in the empty trunk. As he observes it, Laura suddenly arrives behind him and stabs him with the axe. The fight begins right there. Despite the constant attacks, John overcomes Laura one time and tries to strangle her, but she recovers and stabs him in the leg. He hunkers down in pain and Laura then lands one final fatal blow. After ending the terror, she staggers away in the forest to find her daughters. She finds them beside the river and proceeds to hug them. With that, they leave the area and walk towards the car. Heaving with sighs of relief, they get in and drive away. But the final moments of the film become interesting as Kayla looks behind, and it is discovered that John has disappeared. With this twist, the movie concludes. That is all for this video. I hope you liked it. If you did, give it thumbs up, subscribe to Zombie Recaps, and turn on notifications so you can get notified by YouTube when we upload a new video. Thanks for watching.